During his wedding, a millionaire was paralyzed when he realized that the waitress was his wife who disappeared 9 years ago. He approached, and Lucas Bennett stood at the altar, his tailored tuxedo fitting him perfectly, exuding the charm and confidence that made him one of the most powerful men in the country. The grand ballroom of the Montclair Estate shimmered under the glow of golden chandeliers, reflecting in the crystal-clear glasses of champagne being served by an army of waiters dressed in pristine white uniforms. The soft melody of violins filled the air, blending with the murmur of elegantly dressed guests exchanging polite compliments. Tonight, he was set to marry Kimberly Benson, the woman he had chosen, the woman he believed was his future. She stood across the room, surrounded by a circle of admirers, her radiant beauty only accentuated by the shimmering silk of her designer gown. She was composed, poised, perfect. She was exactly where she wanted to be. The guests watched the couple with admiration, seeing them as an embodiment of power and sophistication. To the outside world, this was more than just a wedding. It was an event of high society, a merging of two influential names that would strengthen their position in the elite. But something felt off. Lucas couldn't place it, but an uneasy sensation gnawed at him, like an itch just beneath the surface of his consciousness. His best man, Logan Hastings, clapped a hand on his shoulder, pulling him out of his thoughts. "Relax, my friend." Logan smirked, tilting his whiskey glass toward him. "You look like a man facing execution, not a wedding." Lucas chuckled, though the sound was hollow. "Guess I'm just taking it all in. Don't overthink it. You're about to marry one of the most beautiful women in the country. You won." Lucas nodded absent-mindedly. Then why did it feel like something was missing? Kimberly turned, catching his gaze from across the room. She smiled at him, a knowing smile, as if everything was already set in stone, as if there was no room for doubt. And then, in the midst of laughter and clinking glasses, it happened. A simple movement, a tray being lifted, a pair of eyes meeting his. Lucas's entire world shifted. At first, he thought it was a mistake, a trick of the light, a cruel illusion. But no, it was her, Charlotte, his Charlotte, the woman who had vanished without a trace 9 years ago, the woman he had spent millions trying to find. She was standing just a few feet away, dressed in a simple waiter's uniform, her blonde hair tied back in a low ponytail. She moved between the guests, gracefully balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes. His throat dried instantly, his pulse hammered violently in his ears. Everything, the music, the laughter, the murmurs of the guests, faded into nothing. It couldn't be. It was impossible. He blinked, his entire body tensing, as if his mind were playing tricks on him. But no, she was real. Lucas took a step forward, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Charlotte." The woman flinched. Her eyes snapped to his, and for a split second, the world stood still. Blue, the same piercing blue that had once been his home, his comfort. But something was wrong. There was no recognition in her eyes, no relief, no emotion, only confusion and fear. I'm sorry, sir." Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "I don't know who you're talking about." Lucas's stomach twisted into a painful knot. "What?" His voice barely came out, strangled with disbelief. "Charlotte, it's me. It's Lucas." Her lips parted slightly, but she took a step back, gripping the tray like it was her lifeline. "I think you're mistaken," she said quickly, her breathing shallow. No, this wasn't real." Lucas reached for her, desperate, but before he could, she turned and disappeared into the crowd, weaving between elegantly dressed guests as if running for her life. His legs felt frozen. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. For 9 years he had searched for her. He had believed she was dead, and now she was here, pretending not to know him. A soft, familiar voice purred beside him. "Everything okay, darling?" "Kimberly." He turned slowly, his mind still struggling to process what had just happened. She was close now, her manicured fingers sliding over his arm, concern carefully painted onto her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She let out a soft laugh, but there was something too controlled in the way she spoke. For the first time, Lucas noticed it. The arrogance, the certainty, the confidence. Kimberly was secure, too secure, as if she had already won. But everything had changed. Lucas clenched his fists. He had to find Charlotte. He had to know the truth. And deep inside, something told him that this was only the beginning. Lucas barely registered the rest of the wedding reception. The moment Charlotte disappeared into the crowd, it was as if the world around him no longer existed. Conversations blurred into meaningless noise. Champagne tasted like nothing. And every polite smile thrown his way felt utterly irrelevant. His body was still in that ballroom, but his mind was elsewhere, chasing after the woman he had lost nearly a decade ago. Kimberly continued to glide around the party with effortless grace, greeting guests, laughing at their jokes, basking in the admiration that came with being the new Mrs. Bennett, or at least, she thought she was. Lucas played along, responding when necessary, forcing a smile when someone congratulated him. But inside, his thoughts burned. Charlotte, alive, here, and she had looked at him like he was a stranger. That haunted him more than anything else. The woman he had once loved so deeply, the woman he had torn the world apart searching for, had flinched at the sound of her own name. It didn't make sense. None of it did. He needed answers. Later that night, Montclair Estate, the moment the last guest left, Lucas loosened his tie and headed straight for his office, his mind in overdrive. The wedding night was supposed to be spent in celebration with his new wife, but he couldn't care less about Kimberly or the absurd spectacle they had just performed for society. Kimberly was a mistake. This whole marriage was a mistake. And now, everything had changed. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Kimberly. She leaned against the frame, still in her wedding gown. Her lips curved into a smirk, too confident. "You've been distant all night," she observed, tilting her head. "And you barely looked at me during the first dance." Lucas took a slow breath, reining in his frustration. "It's been a long day." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "I hope that's all it is. I wouldn't want you having second thoughts about us." He met her gaze. Unreadable. Would that matter? Her lips twitched slightly, but she covered it with a soft chuckle. Of course it would. She moved closer, placing a hand on his chest, but he didn't react. "We're married now, Lucas. Everything we've built, this power couple we've become, it's real." He resisted the urge to scoff. Real. Nothing about tonight felt real. Not this marriage, not Kimberly, but Charlotte. Charlotte had been real, even if she didn't remember him. Kimberly's fingers trailed along his collar. "Come to bed," Lucas exhaled sharply. "Not tonight." Her eyes darkened for a brief second before she quickly masked it with a chuckle. "Fine, but don't make a habit out of it, husband." She walked away. But something about the way she said that word, husband, made his stomach tighten. She was too composed, too calculated, and deep down, he knew she was hiding something. The search begins the moment Kimberly was out of sight. Lucas grabbed his phone and made a call. If Charlotte was alive, he was going to find her. And if someone had kept her from him all these years, he would make them pay. The call connected. "I need you to find someone," Lucas said, his voice sharp. "And I don't care what it takes." The hunt was on. The next day, the investigation begins by the time the sun rose over Montclair Estate. Lucas had already gone through 3 cups of coffee and reviewed every piece of information available from his private investigator, Antonio Ramirez. The man had been on Lucas's payroll for years, investigating Charlotte's disappearance, chasing leads that always ended in dead ends until last night. Lucas had believed she was gone forever. Now, he had proof she was alive. Ramirez sat across from him in the study, scanning the photo Lucas had provided from the security footage at the wedding. A grainy but undeniable image of Charlotte carrying a tray of champagne, wearing a uniform. "This is her," Lucas said. His voice was firm, unwavering. "She's alive," Ramirez sighed. "This is a hell of a shock, boss. 9 years is a long time. Are you sure she didn't recognize me?" Lucas cut in, his jaw clenched at the memory. "She looked right at me and didn't know who I was." Ramirez's brows furrowed. "Amnesia," Lucas exhaled. "That's the only thing that makes sense." Ramirez scratched his jaw. "The real question is, where has she been all these years?" Lucas's grip on the coffee cup tightened. That was the question that haunted him the most. "Find out," he ordered. "Find everything." The first clue hours later. Ramirez called back. "I found her. Lucas's stomach tightened. Where? She works at a small restaurant downtown, Ramirez said. She goes by the name Charlie Davis. No official records before 5 years ago. No passport, no birth certificate. Nothing before that. Lucas's heart pounded. Someone erased her. That's what it looks like, Ramirez confirmed. Boss, if she really has amnesia, she's been living a completely different life. Someone did this to her. Lucas's blood boiled. Who? Why? And why now? Send me the address, Lucas said. You sure about this? Ramirez hesitated. If you walk into her life now, you could scare her. You need to play this carefully. Lucas swallowed hard. He knew Ramirez was right, but he wasn't going to wait. He had already lost 9 years. He wasn't losing another second. The encounter Lucas pulled up outside the small diner, his heart racing. The contrast between the life she had now and the one they had before was staggering through the window. He saw her, moving between tables, taking orders, smiling politely at customers, a stranger in her own life. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Charlotte, or Charlie Davis, turned at the sound of the bell above the door. Their eyes met. For the second time in 2 days, she froze. Lucas took a slow step forward. Hello, Charlotte. She paled. And this time, she ran. Lucas didn't hesitate. The moment Charlotte bolted through the kitchen door, he followed. His heart pounded in his chest, his adrenaline spiking as he pushed past startled cooks and servers. Hey, you can't be back here, someone shouted. But he didn't care. Charlotte was already pushing through the back exit, her steps frantic, her breathing uneven. Lucas barely managed to slip through the door before it slammed shut behind her. The alley behind the diner smelled of rain and asphalt. The pavement was slick, reflecting the gray sky above. Charlotte was running, her uniform-clad figure disappearing around a corner. Lucas sprinted after her, his pulse hammering. Charlotte, wait, he called out. She didn't. She turned another corner, but she was fast, almost as if she had been running all her life. Lucas was faster. Years of discipline, control, and strength gave him the advantage. As soon as she hesitated at the edge of a busy street, he caught up, grabbing her wrist gently but firmly. She gasped, her body tensing as she spun to face him. Let me go, she breathed, struggling against his grip. Please, he said, his voice raw. Just listen to me. Her blue eyes were wide, wild. She wasn't just scared, she was terrified. I don't know you, she whispered, shaking her head as if trying to make sense of him. I don't know what you want from me. Lucas felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. This wasn't an act. She truly didn't remember him. He let go of her wrist slowly, raising his hands in surrender. I don't want to hurt you, He exhaled, his throat tightening. I just want to talk. Charlotte took a shaky step back. Her breathing was shallow, her body still tense as if ready to run again. I don't know you, she repeated, softer this time, as if she wanted to believe it. Lucas studied her, the way she stood, the way her hands curled at her sides as if bracing for impact. She wasn't just scared of him, she was scared of something bigger. Okay, he said carefully. Then let me introduce myself. My name is Lucas Bennett. Something flickered across her face. The name meant something to her. She swallowed hard. I have to go. She turned quickly, hurrying away before he could stop her. Lucas let her go this time. If he chased her again, he'd only scare her more. Instead, he watched her disappear into the crowd, his mind racing. She didn't remember him, but something inside her recognized his name. That meant something, and Lucas was going to find out exactly what. Ramirez was waiting for him when he got back into his car, the detective's face unreadable as Lucas slammed the door shut. She ran, Lucas muttered, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Ramirez sighed. Figured that might happen. Lucas exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel. She doesn't remember me. Ramirez studied him for a long moment before nodding. I've seen cases like this before. Trauma-induced amnesia, maybe even manipulation. If someone erased her past, they did it for a reason. Lucas clenched his jaw. I need to know who. Ramirez handed him a folder. I started digging. That name she's using, Charlie Davis. It didn't exist before 5 years ago. Someone gave her that identity, boss. Someone kept her hidden. Lucas flipped open the folder. Inside were addresses, records. What little there was of them. She had no real background before that time. That's not all, Ramirez continued. She doesn't have a bank account, no digital footprint, no credit history. Whoever set this up made sure she lived in the shadows. Lucas's grip on the folder tightened. You're telling me someone wanted her to disappear? Ramirez nodded grimly. And they did a damn good job of it. Lucas stared at the documents, his mind a storm of emotions. Someone had taken Charlotte away from him. Someone had erased her life, her memories, her identity, and now she was here, just out of his reach, but not for long. I need to talk to her again, Lucas said. I need to make her remember. Ramirez sighed. You push too hard, too fast, and you'll scare her off for good. Lucas turned to him, his eyes dark. I don't have a choice. I lost her once. I won't lose her again. Charlotte sat in her tiny apartment that night, her hands gripping a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her mind was a mess. Lucas Bennett. Why did that name make her feel like she couldn't breathe? The moment she had looked into his eyes, something deep inside her had shifted. It was like a faint echo of something long forgotten. A feeling, a memory, a life she couldn't reach. Her heart had pounded not just in fear, but in recognition. But that wasn't possible. She didn't know him. She had never known him, right? She pulled the small pendant around her neck, tracing its edges with her fingers. It was the only thing she had from before she woke up in a hospital bed 5 years ago with no memory of who she was, before she had been told she was Charlie Davis, before she had been given a new life, a safe life. So why didn't it feel safe anymore? A soft knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. Her stomach twisted. Something inside her told her that when she opened that door, nothing would ever be the same again. She hesitated, breathed deeply, then turned the handle. And there, standing in the dim hallway, was Lucas Bennett. This time, he wasn't letting her run. Charlotte's breath hitched. She stood frozen in the doorway, gripping the edge of the frame as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Lucas stood there, looking impossibly composed, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored coat. The dim light from the hallway cast sharp shadows on his face, highlighting the intensity in his eyes. He wasn't here to cause a scene. He wasn't here to intimidate her. But there was something undeniably resolute about the way he stood there, refusing to be shut out again. She should slam the door in his face. She should turn away and pretend this wasn't happening. But she didn't. Instead, her fingers trembled on the door handle. Her body caught in an invisible war between logic and something deeper, something raw and unexplainable. Lucas didn't move. He didn't push. He simply let the silence stretch between them, waiting. Finally, she found her voice, though it was barely above a whisper. How did you find me? Lucas exhaled. Slow and controlled. I wasn't going to stop looking. That shouldn't have sent a shiver down her spine. But it did. She swallowed, shaking her head as if trying to clear the fog in her mind. This wasn't right. This couldn't be right. You shouldn't be here, she said more firmly this time. I told you, I don't know you. Lucas's jaw tightened. His voice, however, remained steady. Then why didn't you shut the door? Charlotte stiffened. She didn't have an answer for that. Lucas took a slow step forward, careful not to crowd her. I don't expect you to believe me, Charlotte, but I need you to listen. The way he said her name, it did something to her. Something she didn't understand. My name is Charlie, she said quickly, her fingers tightening on the doorframe. Lucas's lips pressed into a thin line. No, it's not. The words cut through the air between them, heavy and certain. He wasn't asking. He was telling her. Charlotte forced herself to breathe. Her chest felt too tight, as if she were caught in some invisible vice. You're wrong. Lucas tilted his head slightly, watching her. Am I? Something inside her screamed for her to shut the door, to end this right now. But another part, an insistent, quiet part, told her to keep listening. Please, he said after a long pause. Just give me 5 minutes. She hesitated. 5 minutes wouldn't hurt, right? 5 minutes and he would leave. Against her better judgment, she stepped back, opening the door wider. Lucas didn't gloat. He didn't smirk in victory. He simply stepped inside, moving with the careful grace of a man who knew he was treading on fragile ground. Charlotte closed the door, swallowing the lump in her throat. She crossed her arms, suddenly too aware of how small her apartment felt with him inside. "Talk," she said, keeping her tone even. Lucas studied her for a moment before speaking. "You disappeared 9 years ago." She stiffened. He continued. I searched for you. For years. No one could find you. It was like you just vanished." Charlotte forced herself to meet his gaze. "And you think I'm her?" Lucas's eyes darkened, as if the very idea of thinking she was Charlotte was absurd. "I know you are." She let out a sharp breath. "I told you. My name is Charlie Davis. I have been living here for 5 years before that. I don't know. I woke up in a hospital without any memories, and the only thing I had was a necklace with the initials CEB. That's it. That's my past." Lucas took a step closer, his voice quieter now. "CB, Charlotte Bennett." The room felt suffocatingly small. Charlotte's fingers instinctively went to the pendant around her neck, the only thing that had ever felt real to her. Lucas saw the movement, and his expression softened for the first time since arriving. "You kept it." She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt vulnerable, exposed. "It was the only thing I had." "It doesn't mean anything." Lucas inhaled sharply, struggling to keep his emotions in check. "It means everything." Charlotte turned away, needing to create space, but he wasn't letting her retreat into herself. "You don't have to believe me now," Lucas said, gentler this time. "But something inside you knows the truth, doesn't it?" She hated that he was right, hated that her body reacted to him in ways that didn't make sense. Her chest ached, her head throbbed. It was too much. "Please, just go," she whispered. Lucas didn't move. "I don't want to scare you, but I can't walk away. Not again. Not after finding you." Charlotte closed her eyes for a brief moment, gathering her thoughts. When she opened them again, Lucas was still there, unwavering. "I need time," she finally admitted. Lucas nodded. "I can give you that," relief mixed with unease in her stomach. "Then go. This time." He listened, but before he stepped out the door, he turned back to look at her. "I'll be back," he said, and it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Then he was gone. Charlotte let out a shaky breath, pressing her hands against the door as if grounding herself. Her world had just turned upside down, and deep down, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. Charlotte barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying every second of her encounter with Lucas. His voice, his eyes, the way he had spoken her name as if it belonged to her. But it didn't. It couldn't. She wasn't Charlotte Bennett. She was Charlie Davis. That's what she had been told when she woke up in that hospital bed 5 years ago. That's what the nurse had called her when she had no memories, no identity, no past. It was the only truth she had. And yet, why did it feel like a lie? She sat up in bed, rubbing her hands over her face, exhaling shakily. Something inside her had shifted the moment Lucas said her name. It was like hearing a song from childhood, distant, blurry, but still there. Lodged somewhere deep, her fingers found the small pendant around her neck. CIB, Charlotte Bennett. She closed her eyes, gripping it tightly. Why did this feel right? The sun was barely rising when she pulled on a jacket and grabbed her bag. She needed air. She needed distance. The tiny apartment she had called home for years suddenly felt suffocating. She stepped outside, the crisp morning air hitting her skin, but it did little to clear the fog in her head. She walked without direction, lost in her own thoughts, until she found herself in front of the diner where she worked. It was too early for her shift, but she needed something familiar, something that made sense. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside. Her manager, Rita, was behind the counter, counting the cash register. She glanced up, surprised. "Charlie, you're early." Charlotte hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." Rita gave her a knowing look. "Something on your mind." "Everything." But she couldn't say that. Instead, she forced a smile. "Just one of those nights." Rita didn't push. "Well, since you're here, you can help me prep." Charlotte nodded, grateful for the distraction. She moved behind the counter, rolling up her sleeves. Routine. That was what she needed. Something to anchor her. But then the bell above the door rang again. She turned and her stomach dropped. Lucas stood there, dressed casually this time, though nothing about him looked relaxed. His presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Charlotte felt every nerve in her body tighten. Rita looked between them, raising an eyebrow. "Friend of yours?" "No." "Yes." She didn't know. Lucas's eyes stayed locked on hers, unwavering. "I was hoping we could talk." Charlotte swallowed hard. "I have to work." Rita, who had the worst possible timing, wiped her hands on a towel and grinned. "Take a break, Charlie. You never take breaks." Lucas didn't move, didn't push. He simply waited, letting her make the decision. Charlotte exhaled slowly, nodding toward a booth in the corner. 5 minutes. She slid into the booth, folding her arms as Lucas sat across from her. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Did you sleep at all?" She scoffed. "Are you seriously asking me that?" Lucas's lips curved slightly, but there was no humor in it. "I know this is a lot. I know you don't trust me." Charlotte clenched her jaw. "I don't even know you." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "But do you feel like you should?" She hated that he asked that. Because yes, she did. And that terrified her. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas exhaled, as if he had expected that answer. "I brought something," he said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. She stared at it, hesitant. "Photos," he said quietly. "From before." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the envelope, fingers brushing against the seal. She shouldn't open it. If she opened it, there was no turning back. But her curiosity, her need for answers, won. She pulled out the first photo. Her heart stopped. It was her. No, it was Charlotte, a woman who looked exactly like her, standing in front of a grand estate, sunlight catching in her blonde hair, a laugh frozen in time. She flipped to the next one, her and Lucas together. His arm was around her waist, both of them looking at each other with a kind of intimacy that made her chest tighten. Her hands shook. She set the photos down as if they were burning her fingertips. This isn't me," she whispered, but the words sounded weak, uncertain. Lucas's voice was soft. "It is?" Charlotte shook her head, gripping the edge of the table. "No, I woke up 5 years ago in a hospital. No one came looking for me. If I was this person, why didn't you find me then?" Lucas's expression darkened. "Because someone made sure I couldn't." Charlotte's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Lucas hesitated before speaking. "You were taken from me, Charlotte. Someone erased your life, your memories. I spent years searching, but it was like you never existed." Charlotte's pulse pounded. "That couldn't be true, could it?" "I don't know who did this to you," Lucas continued, "but I know it wasn't an accident." Her head spun. None of this made sense. "I need you to trust me," he said. "I need you to let me help you." Charlotte clenched her jaw. "I don't even know who I am." Lucas met her gaze, his voice steady. "Then let's find out together." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to reach out and take the lifeline he was offering. But if he was telling the truth, then everything she thought she knew about herself was a lie, and that kind of truth could destroy her. She pushed the photos back toward him. "I need time." Lucas nodded, though she saw the frustration in his eyes. "Okay." She stood abruptly, needing to get away before she lost herself completely. But as she walked back behind the counter, she could feel Lucas's gaze on her, steady, patient, and deep inside. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't sure who she was anymore. Lucas walked out of the diner, his mind racing. The way his Charlotte, had looked at those photos told him everything he needed to know. She might not fully remember yet, but something inside her recognized the truth. That meant whoever had erased her past hadn't done a perfect job, and if there was one thing Lucas knew about the truth, it always found a way to surface. Sliding into his car, he pulled out his phone and called Ramirez. "Tell me you have something," Lucas said, his patience wearing thin. Ramirez let out a sigh on the other end. "You're not gonna like it. Try me. I traced back everything I could from Charlotte. Sorry, Charlie Davis. And whoever set up her identity knew exactly what they were doing. No official records exist before 5 years ago. No past employment. No social security number linked to anything prior to that. It's like someone built her from scratch." Lucas gritted his teeth. And I pulled hospital records," Ramirez continued. She was admitted under emergency circumstances 5 years ago at a private clinic outside of Miami. Unconscious. No ID, no personal belongings except for that necklace. No one ever came looking for her. Lucas's grip on the steering wheel tightened. You're telling me that someone dumped her there and walked away? Looks that way. Lucas exhaled sharply. Who ran the clinic? Ramirez hesitated. That's where it gets tricky. The hospital was owned by a shell company, and guess whose name was tied to it? Lucas's stomach twisted. Logan Hastings. His fingers clenched around the phone. That son of a bitch, Ramirez continued. It was listed under one of his offshore holdings, dissolved a year after Charlotte was admitted. If I had to guess, that clinic wasn't just any hospital. It was a place where people disappeared. Lucas's blood ran cold. Logan had been his best friend, his business partner, and all this time, he had been the one responsible for taking Charlotte away. Lucas had suspected Logan of shady dealings before, but this was personal. Where is he now? Lucas asked, his voice sharp. Same as always, playing the charming executive at your company, acting like he runs the world. Lucas's jaw clenched. Logan was at his company, living his life, while Charlotte had been hidden away, forced into a life she didn't recognize, and he had been too blind to see it. Not anymore. I want eyes on him, Lucas said. Everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, if he so much as breathes suspiciously, I want to know about it. Already on it. Lucas hung up and stared out the windshield, trying to steady his breathing. This wasn't just about finding the truth anymore. This was about payback. Charlotte stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Her fingers traced the pendant around her neck, her thoughts a mess. Everything Lucas had said, everything he had shown her, it was too much, too overwhelming. But the worst part, a part of her believed him. She had always wondered about the missing pieces of her life, the blank spaces, the dreams that felt too vivid, too real to be imagined. And now, she knew why. Somewhere, buried deep inside her, the truth was waiting to be unlocked. A soft knock at her door startled her. She froze, her gut twisted. Something about the knock felt wrong. She hesitated before walking to the door and pressing her ear against it. Silence. Her heart pounded. She wasn't expecting anyone. Then came a voice. Charlie. Not Lucas, someone else. Her hands trembled as she slowly turned the knob and cracked the door open. A man stood there, someone she didn't recognize. Well-dressed, expensive watch, sharp eyes. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sorry to show up unannounced, he said smoothly, but I was hoping we could talk. Charlotte's instincts screamed danger. I think you have the wrong apartment, she said quickly. Trying to close the door, the man's hand shot out, stopping it. Her pulse spiked. I don't think I do, Charlotte. Her blood ran cold. He knew her name, her real name. Before she could react, a familiar voice rang out from the hallway. I'd step away if I were you. Lucas, his presence filled the space instantly. All cold fury and sharp control, the stranger barely flinched. He let go of the door and turned slowly, sizing Lucas up with an amused smirk. Mr. Bennett, the man greeted casually. I was just having a friendly chat. Lucas's jaw ticked. Funny, I don't recall Charlotte inviting you in. The man shrugged. No need to be hostile, we're all friends here. Lucas took a deliberate step forward, towering over him. You have exactly 3 seconds to leave before I make you. The man's smirk remained, but something flickered in his eyes. Something careful. He knew he was pushing a dangerous line. Finally, he stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. No hard feelings, he said, just checking in on an old friend. Lucas didn't move until the man disappeared down the hallway. Charlotte's breath came in short, uneven bursts. Lucas turned to her, his expression unreadable. You know who he is? She shook her head, her hands still trembling. No, but he knew me. Lucas's eyes darkened. Pack a bag, he said, his voice low. You're not staying here. Charlotte hesitated. Now, Charlotte. She didn't argue. For the first time in 5 years, she felt truly unsafe, and the only person she trusted to keep her safe was the man who claimed she was his wife. Charlotte stuffed clothes into a duffel bag with trembling hands. The room around her, Once familiar and comforting, now felt like a trap, like someone had been watching her all along. Lucas stood near the door, arms crossed, his jaw tight. His presence filled the small apartment, radiating barely contained frustration. She could feel his tension, his urgency, but he wasn't pushing her. Not yet. "I don't need a babysitter," she muttered, throwing another shirt into the bag. Lucas let out a sharp exhale. That wasn't a friendly visitor, Charlotte. That was a warning. She paused, gripping the edge of the dresser. A warning for what? His silence was answer enough. Her stomach twisted. She turned to face him, gripping the pendant around her neck like it was the only solid thing in her world. "I don't even know what I'm running from." Lucas's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Then let's figure it out together." She swallowed hard, ignoring the way his words unsettled something deep inside her. "Where are we going?" she asked, zipping up the duffel bag. "Somewhere safe," he replied simply. Safe. She wasn't sure she even knew what that meant anymore. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and followed him out of the apartment. The car ride was silent at first. Charlotte stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and red. She wasn't sure how she had ended up here, sitting in a sleek black car with a man who claimed to be her husband, a man who had appeared out of nowhere, unraveling the fragile life she had built for herself. But what scared her most wasn't him. It was the fact that deep down, she wanted to believe him. Lucas finally broke the silence. "That man who showed up tonight, he knew exactly where to find you. That means someone's been watching you." Charlotte's fingers curled into fists. "Why, I'm not important." Lucas gave her a pointed look. "You were my wife, Charlotte. That makes you very important." She turned to him, frustration bubbling to the surface. "But I don't remember being your wife. I don't remember you. I don't remember our life. And I don't know why any of this is happening to me." Lucas's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then let me help you remember." She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. "What if I don't want to?" Silence. Lucas pulled the car into the underground parking lot of an upscale building. Shutting off the engine, he turned to her, his blue eyes dark and unreadable. "You might not want to," he said finally. "But you need to." She swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. Lucas got out of the car without another word, waiting for her to follow. After a long moment, she did. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture, a view of the city skyline that stretched endlessly into the night. It was elegant, luxurious, but it was also cold, like no one had really lived there in a long time. Charlotte set her bag down hesitantly. "This is yours." Lucas nodded. "One of them. Of course. Of course, he had more than one place to live. He had the aura of a man who had never needed to ask permission for anything in his life." She walked toward the window, placing a hand against the cool glass. "Why did you stop looking for me?" Lucas stilled behind her. "I never did." Her chest tightened. "Then why didn't you find me?" She whispered. Silence. Then, finally, "Because someone made sure I wouldn't." She turned slowly, searching his face. "Logan." His jaw clenched. "I have reason to believe he's involved." Charlotte exhaled shakily, stepping away from the window. "So what now? I just hide. For now?" She shook her head. "That's not a plan. That's avoidance." Lucas studied her. "You want a plan?" She crossed her arms. "Yes." His expression darkened. "Then we go after the truth. We find out exactly what happened to you, who took you, and why." Charlotte's pulse quickened. "And what if I don't like the answers?" Lucas's gaze was steady. "Then at least you'll finally have them." She let out a slow breath. She had spent years not knowing. Maybe it was time to finally find out. She turned toward him, meeting his gaze head-on. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do it." Lucas didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just nodded, because he had already made his decision a long time ago. And now, Charlotte had made hers. Kimberly Benson swirled the wine in her glass, her manicured fingers tapping lightly against the stem. The restaurant was dimly lit, private, the kind of place where powerful people discussed things they didn't want the world to hear. Across from her, Logan Hastings sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You look nervous," Logan remarked. Taking a sip of his whiskey, Kimberly exhaled softly, offering him a tight smile. "Should I be?" Logan's lips curved. That depends. She studied him carefully. Logan had always been calculated, meticulous. He didn't make moves without thinking at least 5 steps ahead, and yet, something about him tonight felt off. He wasn't just relaxed. He was too relaxed. Like a man who thought he had already won. Kimberly leaned forward slightly. Lucas knows. Logan raised an eyebrow. Knows what, exactly? She narrowed her eyes. That Charlotte is alive. For the first time, something flickered across Logan's face. Something dark. Something dangerous. Kimberly knew that look. It meant trouble. He let out a low breath, setting his glass down carefully. Well, that's unfortunate. She clenched her jaw. Unfortunate. That's all you have to say. Logan tilted his head. What would you like me to say? Kimberly's fingers tightened around her glass. Lucas isn't stupid. If he keeps digging, he'll find out everything. Logan smirked. Then let's make sure he doesn't. Kimberly swallowed, pushing down the unease rising in her chest. She had always thought she and Logan were on the same side, but now, for the first time, she wasn't so sure. She took another slow sip of her wine. Her mind racing. She had worked too hard, played her role too perfectly to watch everything crumble now. She needed to get ahead of this. Before Logan decided she was expendable, Lucas paced in his penthouse. Phone pressed to his ear. Tell me you have something. Ramirez sighed on the other end. Still digging. But I found out Logan has been meeting with someone frequently in the last few months. Lucas stopped pacing. Who? Kimberly. Lucas's jaw tightened. He should have known. He should have seen it. Kimberly had always been strategic. Always had a way of positioning herself exactly where she needed to be. And now, she was caught in the middle of whatever game Logan was playing. What do you want to do? Ramirez asked. Lucas's fingers curled into a fist. Keep watching them. If Kimberly is smart, she'll see Logan for what he really is. If she's not, well, she'll go down with him. Ramirez chuckled. Ramirez. Cold, Bennett. Lucas exhaled sharply. Not cold. Just done playing nice. He ended the call and turned, only to find Charlotte watching him from across the room. She was standing near the kitchen, arms crossed, expression unreadable. How bad is it? She asked. Lucas sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Bad. Charlotte hesitated before stepping closer. Kimberly? She's your fiancé. Lucas let out a bitter chuckle. She was. Charlotte tilted her head. Not anymore. He met her gaze. She stopped being the woman I wanted the second I saw you again. Charlotte swallowed hard, looking away. She wasn't ready for this conversation. Not yet. Instead, she focused on the bigger issue. Logan, she said quietly. He did this to me, didn't he? Lucas nodded. I believe so. Charlotte took a slow breath. Then I want to know everything about him. Lucas studied her. There was determination in her voice now, a fire he hadn't seen before. You really want to do this? He asked. Charlotte met his gaze. I deserve the truth, don't I? Lucas nodded. Yes, she did. Kimberly tapped her nails against the marble countertop of her penthouse, her mind working in overdrive. Logan had dismissed her concerns too easily. He was confident, too confident. And that meant one of two things. Either he had everything under control, or he was willing to let her take the fall. She wasn't about to let that happen. She reached for her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she landed on Lucas's name. She hesitated. Then, against every instinct screaming at her not to, she hit dial. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Kimberly. His voice was flat, emotionless. Kimberly swallowed. Lucas, we need to talk. Silence, then, coolly. About what? She closed her eyes briefly. She hated this. Hated being the one forced into a vulnerable position. But she hated the thought of losing even more. About Logan. That got his attention. She heard the slight shift in his breathing, the pause before he spoke. I'm listening. Kimberly exhaled. Meet me tomorrow, somewhere private. Lucas didn't answer right away. Then, you're making a smart decision, Kimberly. She let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, then why does it feel like I'm signing my own death warrant? Lucas's voice was unreadable when he responded. Because you probably are. Kimberly ended the call, her hand shaking slightly. She had just betrayed Logan, and there was no coming back from it. Charlotte sat on the couch, staring at the city lights through the massive windows of Lucas's penthouse. The skyline stretched endlessly, a beautiful illusion of normalcy. But inside her, everything felt chaotic. The pendant around her neck felt heavier tonight. She traced its edges absent-mindedly, her mind replaying every word Lucas had said. "You were taken from me. Someone erased your life. It wasn't an accident." The pieces of her past were right there, just out of reach, like a puzzle she couldn't quite put together, and it terrified her. Lucas walked into the room, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed her one, watching her closely. "You look like you're thinking too much." She let out a soft scoff, taking the glass. "Can you blame me?" Lucas sat across from her, his eyes searching hers. No. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Charlotte sighed. "I don't know how to do this." Lucas leaned back. "Do what?" She gestured vaguely. "This. Trusting you, trusting myself. I don't know if I'm ready to believe what you're saying." Lucas studied her for a moment before speaking. "You don't have to believe me, Charlotte, but you can't ignore what you're feeling." Charlotte swallowed hard. What she was feeling. That was the real problem, wasn't it? Because despite everything, despite not remembering him, despite not knowing who she really was, being near Lucas felt like home. And that scared her more than anything else. She took a slow sip of the whiskey, letting the warmth burn down her throat. "What if I never remember?" Lucas's grip on his glass tightened. "Then we make new memories." Her breath caught. She wasn't sure why those words made her chest ache, but they did. And then, a flash. Sudden, vivid. A laugh, soft and warm. Her fingers brushing against someone's jawline. The feel of a familiar touch. She gasped, setting the whiskey down too quickly, the glass knocking against the table. Lucas's expression changed instantly. "Charlotte." Her hands trembled as she pressed her fingertips to her temples. I saw something." Lucas leaned in. "What did you see?" She closed her eyes, trying to hold on to it, but it was already slipping away. "I don't know, just flashes, feelings." She exhaled sharply, frustrated. "It's like trying to hold on to water." Lucas didn't push. He just watched her, patient, steady, and for some reason that grounded her. She looked at him, searching his face. "What if I remember and I don't like what I find?" Lucas's voice was quiet, unwavering. "Then we face it together." Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. Maybe, just maybe. She was finally ready to try. Kimberly walked into the dimly lit lounge, her nerves on edge. She had chosen this place because it was private, discreet, the kind of place where deals were made and secrets were exchanged. Lucas was already there, sitting in a booth in the back, his posture calm, unreadable. He looked completely in control. Kimberly hated that about him. She slid into the seat across from him, ordering a martini from the passing waiter before turning her full attention to the man she had almost married. "You're early," she noted. Lucas gave a half smile. "You're desperate." Kimberly let out a humorless chuckle. "I see we're skipping the pleasantries." Lucas leaned forward. "I don't have time for games, Kimberly. You called me, so talk." She exhaled, tapping her nails against the table. "I want protection." Lucas's expression didn't change. "From Logan." She nodded once. Lucas tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You're scared of him." Kimberly took a slow sip of her martini. "I know what he's capable of." Lucas's jaw clenched. "Then you should have thought twice before making deals with him." Kimberly smirked. "Oh, don't act like you're so innocent, Lucas. You and I both know this world doesn't reward honesty." Lucas's expression darkened. "What do you have for me?" Kimberly exhaled, glancing around before lowering her voice. "Logan has been moving money, a lot of it, offshores, fake companies, shell accounts, and he's covering his tracks well." Lucas's grip on the table tightened. "Where's it going?" Kimberly hesitated before meeting his gaze. "That's the part that should worry you." "Lucas, because I don't think he's just stealing from you." Lucas's pulse quickened. "Then what?" Kimberly swallowed. "I think he's building something, preparing for something, and whatever it is, it's big." A slow, cold realization settled over Lucas. Logan wasn't just after power. He was playing a much bigger game, and Lucas had just stepped right into it. Charlotte sat on the balcony of the penthouse, staring out at the city, trying to piece together the fragments in her head. She had felt something earlier, a crack in the wall that had been blocking her past. She wanted more. needed more. She turned at the sound of footsteps. Lucas stepped onto the balcony, watching her carefully. "You okay?" he asked. Charlotte took a slow breath. "I want to try something." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Try what?" She hesitated before speaking. "I want to go back. To our house. To Montclair Estate." Lucas's body went still. Charlotte met his gaze, determination in her voice. "If I have any chance of remembering, I need to go back to where it all started." Lucas exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Charlotte, that place..." He hesitated. "It might be overwhelming." She stepped closer. "I need to do this, Lucas." He held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. "Then we go." Charlotte's heart pounded. This was it, the beginning of the truth, and something told her. Once she walked back into Montclair Estate, there would be no turning back. The drive to Montclair Estate was silent, filled with an underlying tension that neither Lucas nor Charlotte could shake. The weight of the past sat between them, thick and unspoken. Every mile that brought them closer to the grand estate felt like another step towards something irreversible. Charlotte stared out the window, hands clasped together in her lap. She wasn't sure what she expected when she arrived. Memories rushing back in vivid detail. A wave of emotions that would suddenly make sense. Or nothing at all. All she knew was that she needed to see it. Feel it. She needed to know if this place had ever truly been her home. Lucas, hands firm on the steering wheel, stole glances at her every so often. He was worried, she could tell, but he wasn't stopping her. When they finally reached the long, winding driveway leading to the estate, Charlotte felt her pulse quicken. The house loomed ahead, massive, elegant, imposing. For a moment she felt like she couldn't breathe. Then, a flash, she gasped, gripping the door handle. Lucas immediately slowed the car. "What is it?" Charlotte's mind flooded with pieces of something familiar, running through the halls. Laughter, a warm hand closing over hers, the smell of roses. She pressed a hand to her forehead, eyes squeezing shut. "I remember something," she whispered. Lucas inhaled sharply. "What do you see?" She struggled to hold on to the memory, but it was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. "I don't know," she admitted, frustrated. "It's there, but it won't stay." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Then we go inside." Charlotte swallowed hard but nodded. Together they stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath their feet as soon as they reached the front door. Charlotte hesitated. Lucas didn't rush her. After a long moment, she took a breath and stepped inside. The air was thick with nostalgia. The grand foyer, the spiraling staircase, the chandelier hanging like frozen stars above them. It all felt like it belonged to her. She ran her fingers along the smooth wooden railing of the stairs. Then another flash. Soft whispers in the night. A kiss against her forehead. Warmth. Safety. Charlotte gasped, stepping back. Lucas was beside her instantly. "Charlotte." She blinked up at him, her breath unsteady. "I think this was real, you and me." Lucas's face softened. It was. She swallowed the lump in her throat, trying to steady herself. "I need to see more." Lucas nodded, guiding her down the hallway. Then, as they reached his study, something caught his eye. The safe. Lucas's brows furrowed. Something was wrong. He moved toward it, kneeling down. His fingers grazed the edges of the steel. It had been tampered with. His body tensed. Someone had been here. "Charlotte," he said carefully. She turned, confusion on her face. "What?" Lucas pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner. The safe beeped, unlocking with a soft hiss. Inside, it was empty. Every document, every confidential file, every sensitive piece of information about his business, gone. His stomach turned to ice. Charlotte noticed the shift in his expression immediately. "Lucas, what's wrong?" His mind raced. Who had done this? Logan, Kimberly, someone else entirely. Lucas slowly stood. "I kept crucial documents here. Business files, personal records." His voice was tight. "They're gone." Charlotte's face paled. "Gone." Lucas's mind worked quickly, running through every possibility. Whoever took them was looking for something. And if they went through my safe, it means they weren't just after business assets. Charlotte's breath hitched. They were looking for something about me. Lucas nodded grimly. "Yes." A chill ran down her spine. "What if they found it?" Lucas clenched his fists. Then we need to find out what they took. And fast. Charlotte stared at him, heart pounding, because for the first time since this had all begun, she realized she wasn't just remembering the past, she was running out of time. Logan Hastings leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk on his face as he flipped through the confidential files in front of him. Bank statements, transactions, personal details about Charlotte, everything he needed. His private investigator had done well. Breaking into Montclair Estate hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary now. He had the leverage, and if Lucas thought he was going to win this game, he was sorely mistaken. Logan picked up his glass of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid before taking a slow sip. Everything was falling into place. All he had to do now was wait. Lucas sat in his penthouse, gripping the edge of his desk, his mind racing. Logan had been in his house, in his safe. The thought made his blood boil. Across the room, Charlotte paced, arms crossed tightly, tension radiating off her. "He knows," she muttered. "He knows I'm remembering." Lucas's jaw clenched. He took those files for a reason. "He's looking for something." Charlotte turned to face him. "Then we need to stop waiting for answers. We need to take them." Lucas exhaled sharply. "That's exactly what I plan to do." Charlotte hesitated, biting her lip. What if he knows more than we do? What if he has something we don't? Lucas met her gaze. "Then we take it from him." A long silence stretched between them before Charlotte nodded. "I want to go with you." Lucas didn't respond immediately. He could see it in her eyes. The fire, the determination, but also the fear she was trying to bury. "This could get dangerous, Charlotte." She swallowed hard. "I don't care." Lucas held her gaze for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then let's finish this." The drive to Logan's office was tense, silent, calculated. Lucas's mind ran through every possible scenario. Logan was powerful, dangerous, but Lucas had one thing on his side that Logan didn't expect. Charlotte. She was the wild card. She was the key to everything. When they arrived at the towering glass building downtown, Lucas didn't bother checking in at the front desk. He owned half this company. He walked straight to the private elevator. Swiping his access card, Charlotte stood beside him, her fingers curling and uncurling at her sides. She was nervous, but she was ready. As the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Lucas stepped out first, his presence commanding, unshakable. Logan's assistant, a polished young woman, stood abruptly from her desk. "Mr. Hastings is in a meeting. He's about to be in another one." Lucas cut her off. Striding toward Logan's office without waiting for permission, Charlotte followed, her pulse hammering. Lucas threw the door open. Inside, Logan sat behind his sleek desk, looking every bit the composed businessman he pretended to be. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "Well," Logan drawled, setting his pen down, "I was wondering when you'd show up." Lucas didn't waste time. He slammed the door shut behind him, stepping closer. "Where are the files, Logan?" Logan let out a soft chuckle. "Straight to business, no small talk." Lucas's jaw ticked. "You broke into my house." Logan leaned back, his smirk never faltering. "Technically, I didn't, but I did acquire some very interesting documents." Charlotte swallowed, stepping forward. "What do you want?" Logan's gaze flickered to her, and something amused crossed his expression. "Well, well," he murmured. "The lost wife speaks." Charlotte's stomach twisted, but she didn't back down. "Give Lucas back what you stole." Logan tilted his head. "And why would I do that?" Lucas clenched his fists. "Because if you don't, I will ruin you." Logan chuckled, standing slowly, adjusting his expensive watch. "You're always so dramatic, Lucas." Lucas's patience snapped. He slammed his hands onto the desk, leaning in. "I am done playing games, Logan. You have something that belongs to me, and if you think I won't burn everything you've built to the ground, then you don't know me at all." Logan's smirk faltered, just slightly. But then, he changed the game. "I don't have the files anymore," he said smoothly. Lucas froze. "What?" Logan's grin widened. "You heard me. They're gone, in very capable hands." Charlotte's breath hitched. "Who?" Logan sighed. "Oh, I don't think you'd like the answer." Lucas's muscles tensed. "Tell me." Logan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with something dark. Kimberly? Silence. Charlotte's eyes widened. What? Lucas's blood turned to ice. Logan chuckled. Did you really think she was going to just let you walk away? That she was going to watch while you ran off with your long-lost wife? He clicked his tongue. You really underestimated her, Lucas. Lucas clenched his fists. Where is she? Logan shrugged. Who knows, but I'd hurry if I were you. Kimberly isn't the forgiving type. Charlotte's pulse pounded. This was worse than she thought. Lucas turned, grabbing Charlotte's wrist. We're leaving. Logan's voice followed them as they stormed out. Be careful, Lucas. You're running out of allies. Lucas didn't stop. He had one thing on his mind. Kimberly had the files, which meant she was more dangerous than ever. Kimberly sat in the back of her car, gripping her phone as she watched Lucas and Charlotte leave Logan's building. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had the files. She had everything. And now, she had to decide what to do with it. She pressed a button, rolling down the tinted window. A man in a dark suit stood outside, waiting. She handed him a flash drive. Deliver this. The man nodded. And the rest of the plan. Kimberly exhaled slowly. Then, finally, tell them it's time. The man disappeared into the night. Kimberly leaned back, gripping the leather seat, her nails digging into the material. Lucas thought he had won. He thought he was in control, but he was about to find out. She wasn't going down without a fight. Lucas drove through the streets of the city, his grip on the steering wheel tight. The revelation that Kimberly had the files churned inside him like a storm ready to explode. Charlotte sat beside him, her expression tense, her fingers gripping her seat as if bracing for impact. She's not going to just give them back, Charlotte said, her voice quieter than usual. Lucas exhaled sharply. No, she's going to use them. Charlotte swallowed. Against you. Lucas's jaw clenched. Against both of us. The weight of the words settled between them. Charlotte turned toward him, eyes filled with something Lucas couldn't quite place. Then we stop her. Lucas glanced at her, and despite everything, despite the chaos, a flicker of admiration passed through him. She was no longer the woman simply trying to remember her past. She was ready to fight for it. Kimberly sipped her champagne, watching the city skyline from her luxury penthouse, the twinkling lights below like a kingdom she had once been promised. Lucas had chosen her. He had built a life with her. And then, in the blink of an eye, Charlotte had ruined everything. She set her glass down, exhaling slowly. She wasn't going to let Lucas walk away that easily, not after everything she had done. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned, composing herself, before walking across the marble floor and opening it. A man stood there, dressed in a dark suit, his expression blank, efficient. A messenger. Kimberly raised an eyebrow. That was fast. The man nodded. Everything is in place. Lucas Bennett will lose everything in less than 24 hours. A slow, pleased smile spread across her lips. Perfect. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small USB drive. This, she said, placing it in the man's hand, is the final piece. Deliver it to our contact. Make sure they know exactly how to use it. The man nodded once before disappearing into the night. Kimberly let the door close with a soft click, her smile widening. Lucas thought he was untouchable, but power wasn't about strength. It was about control. And by morning, she would have it all. Lucas and Charlotte stormed into Ramirez's office, the scent of cigar smoke and old books thick in the air. The private investigator barely looked up from his files before raising an eyebrow. Well, you two look like you're ready for war. Lucas dropped into the chair across from him, tension radiating from his entire body. We are, Ramirez chuckled, tossing a folder onto the desk. Good, because I have some interesting news. Lucas leaned forward. Tell me. Ramirez tapped the folder. Kimberly's been moving money, a lot of it, and she's been meeting with people who deal in more than just finance. Charlotte frowned. What does that mean? Ramirez sighed, lighting a cigar. It means she's playing dirty, Lucas. Whatever files she stole from Logan's break-in, she's already leveraging them. Lucas's stomach tightened. What kind of leverage? Ramirez took a slow drag before exhaling. The kind that could ruin you. Permanently. Charlotte's breath hitched. What did she do? Ramirez opened the folder and slid a photograph toward them. Lucas's blood froze. It was an image of him and Charlotte, standing close, too close, outside Montclair Estate, the kind of image that could be twisted, manipulated. Charlotte picked up the photo, her fingers tightening around it. This looks like... Ramirez nodded. It's a setup. Someone's crafting a different version of the truth, and with the right push, Kimberly can spin this into a scandal that will take Lucas down. Lucas clenched his jaw. That's not going to happen. Ramirez smirked. Then you better move fast because she's not waiting for you to play catch-up. Charlotte placed the photo back down, her expression set. Where is she? Ramirez hesitated, then sighed. Hosting an exclusive charity gala tonight. High-profile guests, press, the perfect stage for her next move. Lucas stood abruptly. Then that's where we go. Charlotte followed without hesitation. Ramirez exhaled. You two are insane. Lucas smirked coldly. No, we're just done playing by the rules. Kimberly moved through the crowded gala, a champagne flute in hand. Her lips curved into a picture-perfect smile. She had spent years mastering this, the art of control, of deception. Tonight, she wasn't just celebrating her victory. She was making sure Lucas watched her take it. She turned toward one of the news reporters, flashing them a dazzling smile. I assume you received the exclusive I sent over. The reporter nodded, excitement barely concealed. This is going to be headline news by morning. Ms. Benson. Kimberly's grin widened. Good. Let's make sure the whole world watches. Then, the atmosphere shifted. People started whispering, turning. Kimberly's smile faltered slightly. She followed their gazes, and there, standing at the entrance of the gala, was Lucas. Charlotte stood beside him, poised, unshaken. Kimberly's heart pounded. No, they weren't supposed to be here. Lucas's gaze locked onto hers. Kimberly swallowed hard, forcing her composure back into place. She had anticipated his reaction. She had planned for this. What she hadn't planned for was Charlotte walking toward her. The entire room went silent. Kimberly straightened, her eyes narrowing. Well, isn't this a surprise? Charlotte stopped just a foot away, her chin lifted. I want the files, Kimberly. A slow smirk curled Kimberly's lips. And why would I give them to you? Charlotte's pulse raced. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't uncertain anymore. For the first time in years, she knew exactly who she was. Charlotte stepped closer. Because I remember now, she whispered. And I know exactly what you did. Kimberly's mask slipped for just a second, but it was enough. Lucas stepped forward. The game was over. Kimberly had played her cards now. It was their turn. The air in the gala was thick with tension. The glittering chandeliers above cast a warm glow over the luxurious ballroom. But the energy between Charlotte and Kimberly was anything but warm. Lucas stood beside Charlotte, his presence unwavering. His gaze locked on Kimberly with an intensity that could shatter glass. The murmurs among the guests grew louder, reporters already lifting their cameras, sensing something big was about to happen. Kimberly, despite the firestorm swirling around her, maintained her poise. She adjusted the strap of her designer gown, lifted her champagne flute to her lips, and smiled. A slow, calculated smile. You know, she mused, tilting her head. You have a lot of nerve showing up here, Charlotte. Charlotte didn't flinch. I could say the same about you. Kimberly let out a soft chuckle. And what exactly do you think you remember? Charlotte took a slow step forward, her voice low but strong. I remember that you were never supposed to be part of my life. I remember how you waited for me to disappear. And I remember that you and Logan planned this together. Kimberly's fingers tightened around her glass for just a fraction of a second, but Charlotte saw it. Lucas did too. Careful, darling, Kimberly said smoothly. Accusations like that could ruin a woman's reputation. Lucas scoffed. You're worried about reputation now, after everything you've done. Kimberly turned to him, her smirk widening. Oh, Lucas, please, spare me the moral outrage. You of all people should know that in this world, the strong survive, and the ones too blind to see what's coming. She took another sip of champagne. They get left behind. Charlotte's hands curled into fists. You took my life from me. Kimberly arched a brow. I gave you freedom. You should be thanking me. Charlotte's pulse pounded. You erased me. Kimberly's smirk remained, but there was something sharper in her gaze now. And yet, here you are. Right back where you started." The words sliced through Charlotte like a blade, but she didn't waver, not this time. Lucas stepped forward. "Where are the files, Kimberly?" Kimberly sighed dramatically. "You keep asking that as if I'm just going to hand them over." Lucas's voice turned to steel. "I'm done asking." The weight in those words made the air thicker, heavier. The guests, the reporters, everyone was watching. Kimberly's gaze flickered toward the crowd, then back to Lucas. A slow smirk formed on her lips. "You want the files?" she whispered, her tone almost amused. "Fine." She turned and waved toward one of the waiters, who immediately stepped forward, carrying a silver tray. On it was a single USB drive. Charlotte's stomach twisted. Kimberly picked it up delicately, holding it between two fingers. "This little thing right here," she mused. "It holds everything. The money transfers, the deals Logan made, the proof of what really happened to you." "Charlotte," she smiled sweetly. "I wonder how much someone would be willing to pay for it." Lucas took a step forward, but Kimberly pulled the USB back. Ah, she murmured. "Not so fast." Charlotte had enough. She reached out and snatched the drive from Kimberly's hand before the woman could react. Kimberly's mask cracked. For the first time, her composure broke. Lucas immediately grabbed Charlotte's hand, pulling her back, shielding her as Kimberly's entire demeanor shifted. The charming, confident woman was gone. Now, she looked dangerous. "That," she hissed, "was a very stupid move." Lucas's voice was low, deadly. "So was underestimating me." Kimberly laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. "You think this is over? You think I don't have backup plans?" Charlotte narrowed her eyes. "I think you just lost the only leverage you had." Kimberly's hands trembled slightly, but her expression didn't falter. "You have no idea what you've just done," she whispered. Lucas stared her down. "No, Kimberly, you don't." Then, before anyone could react, Kimberly lunged for Charlotte. It happened in a flash. Charlotte gasped as Kimberly's nails scraped against her arm, reaching for the USB, but Lucas was faster. He grabbed Kimberly's wrist, twisting it away from Charlotte with enough force to make her gasp in pain. The entire ballroom froze. Cameras flashed. Reporters gasped. Kimberly's lips parted slightly, realization sinking in. She had just lost control. Completely. Lucas released her wrist, stepping back. Kimberly stumbled slightly, but caught herself. Her breathing was uneven, her mask shattered. And then, the final blow. Charlotte turned toward the closest reporter. "Do you want the real story?" she asked, her voice steady, powerful. The reporters rushed forward. Kimberly stiffened. She knew what was coming next. Lucas placed a protective hand on Charlotte's lower back as she spoke, publicly, loudly for the first time. "My name is Charlotte Bennett. I was taken from my life 9 years ago. My disappearance was not an accident, and I am ready to tell the truth." The room exploded. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Kimberly stared at Charlotte, her eyes wild, her lips parting as if to protest. But there was nothing left to say. Lucas leaned in, his voice just for Kimberly. Game over. Kimberly's breath shuddered, because for the first time in her life, she had truly lost, and this time, there was no way out. Kimberly Benson had always prided herself on control. Every move she made was calculated, every decision designed to keep her on top. She had played the game better than anyone, until now, she was standing in the middle of her own disaster, surrounded by flashing cameras, murmuring guests, and the undeniable reality that her empire was crumbling. Charlotte Bennett stood in front of her, unshaken, her presence a living testament to Kimberly's biggest failure, and beside her, Lucas Bennett, the man Kimberly thought she had won, the man who was now looking at her like she was nothing. Kimberly swallowed, forcing herself to smile despite the burning rage clawing at her insides. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said smoothly, keeping her voice low, controlled. Charlotte didn't blink. "I know exactly what I'm doing." Kimberly's fingers curled around her champagne glass, the tension in her body so tight she thought she might snap. "You think you've won," she scoffed. "You think taking back your pathetic little life changes anything." She leaned in, lowering her voice just enough so only Charlotte and Lucas could hear. "I built everything around you. I made sure you disappeared. And you know what? I'd do it again. Lucas moved. It was subtle, but his stance shifted, his presence suddenly lethal. You should be careful with what you admit, he said, his voice deadly calm. Kimberly smirked. Why, you're going to hit me, Lucas. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with manipulation. Be careful. You wouldn't want to ruin that perfect reputation of yours. Lucas didn't flinch. Because he didn't need to. Charlotte stepped forward instead. You don't scare me anymore, Kimberly, Charlotte said, her voice strong, unwavering. Something shifted in Kimberly's eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. She masked it quickly, but Charlotte saw it. Lucas did too, and that's when Kimberly realized. She wasn't in control anymore. The tension in the room was thick, the silence only broken by the murmurs of onlookers. Kimberly's breathing was uneven now. Her mask was slipping, but before she could recover, the doors to the ballroom swung open, and in walked security. Kimberly's body stiffened. The two guards were followed by 2 police officers, their presence unmistakable. The guests gasped. Reporters scrambled forward. Charlotte's pulse quickened. Lucas stayed still. Kimberly's smile faltered. One of the officers, tall, composed, unreadable, pulled a folded document from his jacket and stepped forward. Kimberly Benson, he announced, his voice firm. Emotionless. We have a warrant for your arrest. The entire room froze. Kimberly's blood ran cold. No, her carefully built world wasn't supposed to end like this. Charlotte stared at her, searching her face, waiting for the realization to settle in. Lucas, meanwhile, watched without an ounce of sympathy. Kimberly laughed. The sound was brittle, humorless, almost hysterical. You're arresting me, she scoffed, shaking her head. For what? The officer didn't flinch. Conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and accessory to abduction. Kimberly staggered back. She could feel all eyes on her, the weight of every camera, every whisper. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to go. She looked for Logan. He had always been there. He had always cleaned up her messes. But Logan was nowhere to be found. Kimberly's hands started to shake. Wait, she breathed, her voice suddenly losing its power. You don't understand. Turn around. Miss Benson, the officer interrupted, his tone final. Kimberly's heart pounded. No. She tried to step back, but one of the guards caught her arm. She struggled. Let go of me. Her voice rose, but it only made the moment worse. The reporters were eating it up. Flashes exploded around her. This would be on every front page by morning. Her legacy, her reputation, her entire future. It was over. The cold bite of steel snapped around her wrists. Kimberly gasped, eyes wide, panicked. She turned, desperate now, toward Lucas. You can't let them do this, she pleaded, her voice shaking. Lucas, please. Lucas stared at her, expression unmoved, eyes hard, detached. You did this to yourself, he said simply. Kimberly's breath hitched. She turned to Charlotte next, but Charlotte only watched. No hatred, no anger, just resolve. That was worse. Kimberly let out a broken laugh. Then the officers pulled her away, and just like that, Kimberly Benson was gone. Lucas and Charlotte stood in silence, watching as Kimberly was escorted out of the building. The whispers, the stares, the fallout. None of it mattered now, because it was over. For the first time in 9 years, Charlotte felt like she could breathe. Lucas turned to her. Are you okay? She exhaled slowly. I think so. Lucas nodded, watching her carefully. You did it, he murmured. Charlotte met his gaze. No, she whispered. We did. Lucas's lips twitched, just slightly. Then without thinking, without hesitation, Charlotte reached for his hand. And this time, she didn't let go. The city never slept. But for the first time in 9 years, Charlotte Bennett felt like she could. After leaving the gala, she and Lucas had driven in silence, the weight of everything that had happened settling deep in their bones. The tension, the fear, the constant feeling of running. It was gone. Kimberly was gone. The truth was out. And yet, as she sat on the rooftop balcony of Lucas's penthouse, staring at the endless skyline, Charlotte still felt adrift. Who was she now? What happened after the storm ended? The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. She turned slightly, watching as Lucas walked onto the balcony, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. "You should be asleep," he said, setting a glass in front of her before taking the seat beside her. Charlotte let out a soft chuckle. "So should you." Lucas shrugged, taking a slow sip. "Guess we both have too much on our minds." She studied him in the dim glow of the city lights. He looked tired, but not just physically, exhausted in a way that went deeper. Charlotte hesitated before speaking. "It's over, isn't it?" Lucas exhaled slowly. "Almost." She frowned. "Almost." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, setting his glass down. "Kimberly's gone, but Logan is still out there." His jaw tightened. "And something tells me he's not going to take this loss lightly." Charlotte swallowed. "Logan?" He had been eerily silent throughout all of this. Too silent. "I don't understand why he let her take the fall," Charlotte admitted, gripping her glass. "They were in this together. He could have saved her." Lucas shook his head. "Logan doesn't save people. He uses them." His voice darkened. "And when they're no longer useful, he leaves them to burn." Charlotte shivered. That meant Logan still had a plan, still had something up his sleeve, and that was terrifying. Lucas seemed to sense her thoughts because he turned to her, his voice gentler now. "We'll deal with him, together." Charlotte met his gaze, and for the first time she let herself believe it. She wasn't alone anymore. She never had to be again. Across the city, Logan Hastings stood in his office, whiskey in hand, watching the news coverage unfold. Kimberly's face was everywhere. The headlines were ruthless. Fraud, conspiracy, and betrayal. Kimberly Benson arrested in stunning scandal. Logan smirked, exactly as he had planned. Kimberly had been useful, but she had also been reckless. She let her personal vendetta cloud her judgment, and that had made her sloppy now. She was out of the way. And Lucas Bennett. Lucas thought he had won. He thought this was over. Logan took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes calculating. Cold, not even close. He reached for his phone, dialing a number. A smooth voice answered. "Is it done?" Logan asked. A brief pause, then, "Yes, everything is in place." Logan's smirk widened. "Perfect." He ended the call, tossing his phone onto his desk, before turning toward the large windows overlooking the city he planned to own. Lucas and Charlotte had won this round, but the game was far from over. Charlotte woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of music playing from the kitchen. For a brief, blissful moment, she forgot everything. She forgot the years of being lost, forgotten. She forgot the fear that had lived inside her for so long. She forgot Logan, Kimberly, the war they had just fought. For the first time, her world felt normal, and then, her eyes landed on the newspapers spread out on the kitchen counter. Her stomach tightened. Lucas stood by the stove, his back to her, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He was shirtless, wearing only sweatpants, his hair slightly tousled from sleep. For a moment, she almost forgot the world outside this moment. Almost. But then she saw the headline. What's next for Lucas Bennett and his long-lost wife? Her breath caught. Lucas turned, following her gaze. His expression hardened slightly. They didn't waste any time. Charlotte swallowed, stepping forward, skimming through the article. It was speculation, of course. Questions about their relationship, rumors about Lucas's business, doubts about whether Charlotte was really who she said she was. She set the paper down. They're never going to stop, are they? Lucas sighed, handing her a mug of coffee. Not anytime soon. Charlotte exhaled, curling her fingers around the warm mug. She had spent so long being invisible. Now, suddenly, she was the center of a story she barely understood herself. Lucas watched her carefully. Are you okay? She hesitated. I don't know. Lucas reached out, brushing his fingers gently against hers. I meant what I said last night. You're not alone in this. Charlotte looked up at him, searching his face. For the first time in years, she had a choice. To keep running, to keep questioning, or to stay, to fight, to rebuild. She took a slow breath, then set down the mug and stepped closer to him. Lucas's expression shifted. His breath hitched, and then she kissed him. It was soft at first, hesitant, unfamiliar, and yet familiar all at once then. Lucas's hands curled around her waist, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss. as if he had been waiting for this moment forever. Charlotte let herself fall into it, because for the first time in 9 years, she wasn't searching for something that was missing. She had found it, and this time, she wasn't going to lose it again. The kiss lingered longer than either of them expected. It wasn't desperate or hurried. It was a beginning, something built not from the ghosts of their past, but from the undeniable reality of their present. Charlotte felt grounded, like the missing pieces inside her had finally found their place. Lucas pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers. His breath was warm, steady. "You sure about this?" he murmured. Charlotte opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. For the first time in 9 years, she wasn't afraid of what she saw in herself. "I'm sure," she whispered. Lucas exhaled softly, his lips ghosting against hers one last time before he pulled her into his arms. No more running, no more doubt. This time, they were choosing each other. The world outside their private moment, however, wasn't done with them yet. The next few days were a blur of media chaos. Charlotte's return had become a national story. Every headline, every news report speculated about her disappearance, about Lucas, about what would happen next. The company board held an emergency meeting, trying to assess the damage Kimberly and Logan had left behind. But Lucas was already ahead of them. He walked into the conference room like a man in control, Charlotte at his side, unshaken by the storm around them. One of the senior executives, a thin man in a navy suit, cleared his throat. "Lucas, we need to discuss the impact of recent events on the company's stock value." Lucas cut him off. "The stock value is fine. The real discussion we need to have is about the internal corruption that almost destroyed us." Murmurs rippled through the room. Lucas tossed a file onto the table. Kimberly and Logan orchestrated a fraud that could have cost this company millions. They thought they could play me, and they almost succeeded. His jaw clenched. That ends today. Charlotte watched as the room shifted. For years, Logan and Kimberly had controlled the narrative. They had manipulated, deceived, and made themselves untouchable. But now, Lucas was the one in control, and Charlotte knew he wasn't going to stop until every last trace of them was erased. But there was still one loose end. Logan. Charlotte felt it in her bones, the way he had disappeared so quietly. So strategically, it wasn't like him, and that meant he was still waiting. Lucas had the same thought. That night, as they sat on the penthouse balcony, overlooking the city, he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "He's not done," Lucas murmured. Charlotte nodded, gripping the edge of her wineglass. "No, he's not." Lucas exhaled, his gaze distant. "I have a plan." Charlotte tilted her head. "You always do." He smirked slightly but didn't elaborate. Instead, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Charlotte squeezed his hand. "Always." The next day, Logan made his move. It started with a phone call. Lucas's phone buzzed on his desk. A blocked number. He answered. Silence on the other end. Then, a slow, mocking chuckle. Lucas's grip on the phone tightened. "Logan. Lucas," Logan drawled. "I was wondering when you'd pick up." Lucas's pulse slowed. He wasn't surprised, but he was pissed. "Your game is over," Lucas said coldly. Logan laughed softly. "Oh, Lucas, you really think this is about a game?" Lucas exhaled sharply. "I don't have time for your bullshit, you lost." Logan hummed. "Did I?" Something in his tone set Lucas on edge. Then Logan added, too casually, "How's Charlotte?" Lucas froze. His entire body went rigid. Logan chuckled again. "She must be so relieved being back in your arms. But tell me, Lucas, does she ever stop and wonder what would have happened if she hadn't escaped?" Lucas's jaw clenched. "You son of a..." Logan sighed dramatically. "Relax. I'm not going after her. I wouldn't waste my time now." A pause. "But I will say this. Next time, you might not be so lucky." Lucas's blood boiled, but he didn't react, because that was what Logan wanted. Instead, Lucas smiled coldly. "Next time, I'll make sure there's no escape for you." Logan was silent for a beat. Then, "Well," he mused, "I suppose we'll see about that." The line went dead. Lucas slowly lowered the phone, his grip tight. Charlotte walked into the room just then, her expression shifting the moment she saw his face. "What's wrong?" Lucas looked at her, and despite everything being over, he knew it wasn't. "Not really," he exhaled, standing up, pulling her into his arms. "It's nothing," he murmured against her hair. Charlotte hesitated but didn't push, because for now, it really was over. For now. But deep inside, Lucas knew the truth. Logan wasn't gone, and one day, he would be back. But when that day came, Lucas would be ready. 1 year later, Charlotte stood at the edge of the Montclair Estate gardens, watching as the sun dipped behind the horizon. A year ago, she had been lost, forgotten. Now, she was home. Lucas walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pressing a soft kiss to her shoulder. "You're thinking again," he murmured. Charlotte smiled. "Always." Lucas turned her in his arms, studying her carefully. "Are you happy?" She exhaled, tilting her head. I finally am," Lucas smirked. "Good." She glanced up at him. "And you?" Lucas pretended to think about it. "Well," he said, voice teasing, "I did just win back the love of my life and take down my enemies. So yeah, I'd say I'm doing all right." Charlotte laughed, shaking her head. Then she reached up, pulling him down into a kiss, because despite everything they had lost, everything they had been through, they had found their way back to each other, and this time, they weren't going to let go.